Okay, excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let's establish, please, that we have a quorum, beginning with a roll call vote. Joe?
Here.
Corby?
Here.
Meredith? Here. Christopher?
Here.
John?
Here.
I am here as well. We have a quorum. Corby, has this meeting been properly noticed? Thank you. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity framework and the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of the agenda. Christopher, would you please be willing to read those for us tonight?
Yes. In the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. And the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement. There are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral lands of the tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thank you. Board, I'll draw your attention then to the remainder of the agenda this evening. There are no other changes or amendments. I'd accept a motion to approve the agenda as printed. So moved. Thank you, Meredith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christopher. By a smidge. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify with aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. So we'll start with the superintendent's report, starting with updates on our annual academic report.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. First, I just want to briefly pause and thank Deputy Superintendent Weezy for taking the role at the board table the last session. I shouldn't feel jealous. They said it's one of the better board meetings I ever had. So. Okay. I'll just do what Chad does next time. But no, seriously, I'd like to thank Chad for stepping in and for the board for their understanding as allowing me to take care of important medical procedure, and I'm happy to be back here with you today.
Glad to have you back, and things went well.
To begin our superintendent's report, while this is a part of OE9 and in terms of compliance, I just think is in terms of the meaning behind our annual academic report truly highlights the work of the dynamic staff of the Verona Area School District and the continuous outcomes that we continue to have in terms of providing a world-class education. We know that the magic continues to happen in our classroom, and this is just a piece of the evidence, not just for those that have children within our district, but we want to make sure that every member of our community, whether they have a child or not in our district, understand what their the fiscal inputs that they put into the district are really coming to fruition in terms of really solid academic outcomes. So just extend gratefulness to the Board of Education to continuous to push and monitor results and have those high levels of expectations into the community for the continued resources that they put into public education to allow this to come to life. I've asked Marcy to come to the table, and also want to thank Marcy and Karen for, as you can see through the report, the visuals and the organization of the materials is extraordinary, but I think the message behind it is even more relevant. So Marcy?
Absolutely. So we had our first day of our Leadership Institute today, so we're moving rapidly toward 2025-26, and the annual academic report gives us a chance to take a glimpse in the rearview mirror at last year and get some information. And it's really, as Dr. Clardy said, part of compliance with OE9, but it's our way of sharing with families, community members, staff members, the results of the work that they've done in the previous year. And the annual academic report, as you can see, is grounded in our strategic framework priority areas. And not only does it include academic outcomes stemming all the way from pre-K to grade 12, it also goes into some of the how, some of the, what's beneath that iceberg of getting to academic outcomes. So what are the structures we have in place, like PLCs and our teaching and learning framework? How do we make decisions about curriculum? And then how do we implement curriculum? And then also goes into a little bit of detail about the services and supports that we have in place that hopefully support students in having academic success. Things like AVID, things like restorative practices, and then also looking at some of our more timely focus areas in the previous year, like attendance. It has updates on our opportunities for growth and our leadership moves. And really the process begins in spring when people are saying, wait a minute, we don't have end of the year assessment results yet. But it's really at that time that we start to think about what's important to the community, what do we want to present to them. And it's really a team effort. As you can see, a lot of different departments, schools, areas contributing information to the annual academic report. And then in terms of dissemination, it is up on our website. If you go to our homepage, it's the very first thing you see on our banner. And I know that we'll be using it this week with our leadership teams. I know that principals have been wanting to make sure it was available online so they could share it with their teams. And then in terms of getting it out to the community, we'll push it out on our social media. We'll put it in our newsletter that goes to all of our families. Then we share it, Dr. Clardy will share it with the Verona Chamber of Commerce board. We'll get it a link in their weekly report. So really doing our best to get it out there. We'll be sending postcards with the QR code to all of our VASD postal holders. Give everybody a chance to dive into it. And then hard copies will be available. We'll get some out to our schools, our libraries, different places around the community. So in a nutshell, that's what's in the report. That's how we go about deciding what's in there and getting it all together. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
I really like that you have the postcard going to all with the QR code. I just think that's very cost savings, but still like putting the information in hands. And having been looked through this earlier, it really looks great. Thank you.
Really appreciate the Spanish version as well. And as we think about access and language accessibility in future years, if we have an increase of other languages, we can think about that as well. But this is very, very appreciated.
I think one of my favorite things is always at the end, the fact that there's transparency around opportunities for growth. So really honoring the things to celebrate and really elevating, to your point, the story behind the results. So, right, that is where the investment of the community is the work that goes into the results that we talk about. And really an amazing page 27, being able to highlight so many of our literally award-winning educators this year. Just so many things to be excited about, but always the fact that our district is looking to what the next step is to continue to grow and really impact students positively. So I like that you said, that reflecting back, knowing that the next steps are coming.
Right, definitely carrying what we've learned into 25, 26.
Marcy, what I liked right away is the cover. Just the diversity right away. Bam, it grabbed my attention when I was sitting here. As soon as I sat down next to Joe, I picked it up right away. So I think, representation matters. What they see is what they'll be. You're on the cover, you feel something about it.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate that.
The last thing I want to elevate is, I know we talk about this at the board table sometimes, is just how jargony this can get, right? How we just have education speak, and I just find this so readable. Right, that's the intention, is to just have this work that we do, that we kind of get lost in the acronyms and whatnot, to be able to really talk about what does this actually mean, and I just find it very readable, and that I appreciate as well.
Yeah, we definitely focused on that this year, trying to make it very accessible to the audience.
Yeah, it's just so easy for us to get lost in some of the things that maybe we know and understand, and right. Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Karen and just the whole team for all of
Yeah,
the
the visuals in here are her vision and her work.
Amazing.
So shout out to Karen, yeah.
Who award winning, by the way. Yes,
Exactly.
your face is on there, as is Karen, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Next in the superintendent's report, I would like to give an update on base wage. And we're joined by our two M&M leaders from VAEA and VESPA, as well as Rochelle Haiti, Human Resources.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Coach Ballard, 1, 2, 3. Good evening, everyone. So this is the exciting time of the year that we get to update the board and our community on our base wage conversations. First, I would like to thank the board and our community for the support that we are able to get from all of you to be able to enter into conversations about base wage, knowing that it is always our priority to ensure that we are compensating our employees well, as much as we possibly can. We know the work that we're doing here is amazing and sometimes difficult, and we have complex jobs, and we wish to do as much as we possibly can to support them through this. To kind of ground in base wage is limited by the state of Wisconsin on what that looks like for us. It is dictated by what they call CPIU, which is the cost of living indexed to our area. And this year, it was maxed out at 2.95%. And base wage is bargained. And so we are able to step into bargaining up to the 2.95%. Outside of bargaining, the board graciously approved steps a couple of months ago, which is separate from base wage adjustments. That depends on where you are on the salary schedule. Typically, a step for a teacher, for hourly staff, is about 2%. A step for administrators, excluding the superintendent, is 1%. And so that has been already applied to our salary schedules. Base wage, we were able to work with VA, EA, and VESPA in the last 4-ish weeks to really kind of come to a conclusion on the base wage bargaining point. So we're here tonight presenting a base wage to the max of 2.95% to be applied to our VESPA staff, which is our hourly staff, our VA/EA staff, which is our certified teacher staff, CTS, which is confidential, technical, and supervisory staff, and our administrators excluding Dr. Cleary. But before we actually move into vote or answer questions, I am hoping to give the space for Jamie and Diana to be able to speak as well.
Thank you, Rochelle. Good evening, Dr. Clarity and school board. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Jamie Brown, and I am VESPA's co-president, and I am a special education assistant in our 18 to 21 program. This is the start of my 22nd year at Verona, and I'm speaking on behalf of the VESPA bargaining team. We would like to thank Dr. Clarity, Nate Edwards, Rochelle Haiti, and Chad Vesey for the productive conversations during base wage bargaining. We are pleased to say that together we reached a 2.95% CPI wage increase for all staff plus step movement for those eligible. So again, we're aware that not every school is able or willing to provide these increases. Dr. Clarity, Nate, Rochelle, Chad have been constructive partners with us. They've been collaborative partners, and we value the positive relationship we've formed. Thank you for continuing to work with us. We also want to recognize the Board of Education for being a supportive ally with VESPA. We know that not all schools have the kind of relationship and support that we have with our school board. Thank you for caring about your support staff. VESPA staff all have a shared vision for excellence in schools, from maintenance and custodial who keep our schools beautiful and operating properly, food service who produce quality food for our students and staff each day, the school tech staff who keep all of our technology performing at its best, our secretaries who are the smiling, helpful faces in our schools, drivers who transport materials throughout the district for all of us, the copy center staff who make it possible for classroom teachers to carry out lessons for our students, and finally, all the staff who have the opportunities to work directly with and support in so many ways students in the classroom. Our bilingual and monolingual education assistants and special education assistants, deaf and hard of hearing interpreters, and certified occupational therapy assistants. All of those job categories fall under VESPA. We have a shared vision for excellence in our schools and what we do every day. I feel it is necessary to mention what we all know is happening in many school districts in our current society. Nationwide attacks are putting pressure on most staff who work in schools. Working in education has gotten more complicated. School staff are more scrutinized and blamed. Many are expected to do more and more every day. The job of an educator is becoming less attractive every year to many because of this. Schools risk not being able to attract high-quality candidates. Funding is continuing to be restricted to schools. We are at a critical state in education. Verona schools are currently known and seen as a leader in Dane County for one of the best starting wages and overall benefits for support staff. We are what other school support staff in our area aspire to. There's been so much collaboration and positive improvements for VESPA staff over the last 4 years. This hasn't happened by chance. This is because of the positive relationship and partnership with Dr. Clarity and our administration. We look forward to continuing to work together through these hard times, brainstorming ways to draw quality candidates and ways to make current staff feel valued so that Verona remains what others aspire to. Thank you again, school board, Dr. Clarity, Chad, Nate, and Michelle.
Jamie.
You sent us fire.
Diana Lynn here. I teach American Consumer Science at Bags Ridge Middle School. I'm starting my 36th year within the district. I think it's important for us to first of all, take a look at who we are representing. In the booklet that we just received on the back, you saw numerous teachers, outstanding teachers, and I would dare say that within our staff, within not only Wisconsin, the Midwest, but also nationally, we have excellent teachers. Teachers come here because of the reputation within our district. They come not only for the money, and as Jamie did a beautiful job talking about, that there are some restrictions that come with that because of where we're at. But I think what's also important to understand is the support that we get from the school board. And I just want to focus on that for a moment. As Jamie said, there's many school boards that do not support teachers. And you said repeatedly, Dr. Clarity, along with all of the school board members that are sitting here, that you want to be in the classroom, that you want to see what we're doing, that you want to know what's going on within the district. And that's very meaningful. Pay, yes, that's very important, but also it's the support that we have, not only from the school board, but also from the community as well. And I feel that Verona area really does support their schools. They know what a great resource we have. So thank you to Rochelle, Dr. Clarity, to Chad, and to Nate also from VAEA with our bargaining. Collaboration is what is going to move us forward. Transparency, there are hard years ahead of what we're going to be able to use for money. So looking at it creatively, what else can we do then to sustain the teachers that we have, to encourage teachers to come, and that is going to be a joint effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
With that, I'm gonna hand this over to Dr. Clarity. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes. When I think about Verona School, Jamie really summarized it, and I also want to give so much credit to the members of VAEA and the VESPA alike. The power of us being able to come together, have, not always easy talks. Sometimes they're very, very hard discussions. But we come to the table with this common respect and common purpose of putting humanity first, and putting each other first, and making sure that it's not about us agreeing on what's happening at the table. It's about us making sure that we continue to prioritize the humanity and the people that make this organization thrive together. You've said it so many times, we are so blessed to have a board of education that has it as one of the primary values and continues to have those expectations, but generally from the heart, I can't tell you the number of spaces where I've had to say corrective words when I talk about, hey, I go back and have a meeting with my union, and I go, no, I like having meetings with our unions. I enjoy those opportunities. I enjoy the times we don't have bad conversations, and it's the only way I truly know what is needed in terms of be a better leader every day. And I think that's what everybody wants to be, a better educator. Everyone wants to lead in a better way. Everyone wants to serve children to their max capacity every single day. And so the more that we can continue to put that message out there of what true collaboration can and does look like, the better that it is for around our state. And hopefully it begins to impact our nation, because that negative narrative out there about collaboration between leadership and unions does not have to exist if you genuinely care about each other, you genuinely care about the outcomes for students. So thank you again for the opportunity to be able to sit shoulder to shoulder with you on a daily basis. And thank you to our Board of Education as you consider this for your vote. Yeah.
Diana and Jamie, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you shared and verbalized. Speaking for myself as a board member, but knowing the conversations that this collective board has, Diana, you said it, the salary matters, right? Trying to compensate you all fairly. That's something that this board really holds as a strong commitment, given all the other constraints we have to work with budgetarily. But I know we also want you all to feel like this is a place you want to work. We could raise salaries to the roof, but my thought is if you're miserable coming here every day, the money doesn't matter that much to overcompensate for just not feeling like this is a place where you want to teach. And so however we can continue to do that as a board, we do have formal policies that put these expectations on leadership, but I appreciate how you said the word humanity. I think this board really collectively raises you all up. We hope you feel that lifting up, in this formal setting and otherwise, because we all just hold you all in such high regard, and we want you to feel like this is a place you want to be. So yes, let's compensate you what we can, and I hope that just the culture of this district really is elevated in a way that your longevity matters, both of you, your already long-term commitment to this district, and to bring in new folks with that same commitment. That's at least a hope I have, so thank you.
So I feel like I make the same comments every year, but why break tradition? I always want to be careful to combat any narrative that we're giving teachers and support staff a raise. Mm-hmm. Because when CPIU is referenced, what that is that's cost of living. So if we were to give anything less than cost of living, it means that the compensation we're paying is not keeping up with the increase of cost of everything that we all have to buy. And I wish we could give you all a raise. I wish this law didn't exist that restricted us from being able to do that, because frankly, I think our teachers and our support staff deserve a raise. And we have talked about this a lot, which is that in my opinion, I know others share it with me, there is no better use of money in terms of the impact that our dollars can have on the classroom than what we pay you all. So if we're looking at how to best spend our money to be able to have the most impact on our students, that's where it lives. And I wish that we could do more, but I'm happy that we can at least do this.
Just wanted to echo and share the same sentiment, but in regards to impact and the excellence that we've received as a family, I just feel lucky every day that we did land here when we moved from the West Coast to the Midwest. There were a lot of considerations that we made. We have some special needs in our family, and so the support that we received from the staff, from MESPA, from our teachers, and the inclusivity that we have felt, it goes to show the excellence of this district and the teachers within it and the administration within it. So I just wanted to share that appreciation and then the direct impact to my family and our appreciation. So thank you so much.
And I'll be super brief. I've been asked by several school districts throughout the state, how do we develop the relationship that we have between the board and our union? And I have tried to think of several ways to put it to them, like how you do it. And the best thing I can come up with is don't be nice, be kind. And that's what I see between us. I know I've had several conversations throughout the years with Barb, and she has helped me along the way. I've been there for her as well. And just that collaboration is what other districts wish they had with their union. And so I just wanted to point out, I really appreciate that. And other districts are watching us because they don't know the secret sauce of how to make that relationship work.
you. All right, well, formally on the agenda, we're gonna open up for public comment next, just to ensure that there isn't any public comment, Lori, that I maybe am aware of or missed, okay? Given that, then we'll go ahead and step directly into board action, where we will then vote on the proposed 25-26 base wage increase that we did just hear about. Any further questions or discussion by the board? I would then accept a motion to approve the proposed 25-26 base wage increase for VESPA and VAEA. Thank you, Meredith. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm gonna give that to Corby on the tie this time. Second by Corby. All those in favor of approving the base wage increase for 25-26 as proposed, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The proposal is approved. Thank you. Thank you, admin team. Thank you, leadership, and to all of your members too for being invested in these discussions in summer. I know that was a lot of communication on your part and their part, so thank you to everyone involved. We are appreciative and honored to at least take that vote with the capacity that we can to give you what you can, what we can. Thanks all. All right, moving on to board action on OE10, Operational Expectation 10 Learning Environment and Student Behavior Monitoring Report. As the team is coming forward, I just want to remind board members and the community and share gratitude for the video. Super appreciate, Adam, your time in putting that together and reminding the community that there is the video to watch for just a deep dive into the report, which I found to be very helpful. And excited to get your voice in the space this evening to hear some of the highlights.
Good evening. As President Murphy said, you all were given an opportunity to preview, review, watch the wonderful video that Adam narrated and commentated. However, tonight we're going to give you all the highlights. So OE10 is a report, is our monitoring report that speaks to the learning environment. And oftentimes we'll hear Dr. Flaherty say, the classroom is where the magic happens. And this monitoring report shares evidence that demonstrates how we create the conditions for the learning to happen so the magic can continue. So tonight, OE10 speaks to, and I'll just go over the highlights of the executive summary. The VASD Board of Education values high standards related to providing a safe and positive climate that is student-centered. All students and staff feel welcome and have a strong sense of belonging. Students and staff are cared for and supported to do their very best work. Much of what we just heard VAEA and VESPA talking about, we create the conditions, but we also have amazing staff that help to create the conditions. The Board of Education expects the superintendent to ensure that all learning environments within the school district are safe by establishing clear expectations for student behavior and school climates that protect students' emotional and physical well-being and addresses culture and climate through appropriate administrative behaviors that disrupt the teaching and learning or operational processes of a school or the school district. With the implementation of the progressive response model, schools will have a coherent model in which to follow. So the key attributes, and so without being redundant, I'm not going to read every single bullet point, but I think it's important to draw your attention to the first one, where it says the Board of Education expects all learning environments to be safe with clear behavior expectations and a climate that supports students' emotional and physical well-being. I also think it's important to draw your attention to bullet 4. The Board of Education expects staff, students, and community voice in our district progressive response model and alignment with our equity statement. And I think you all will see, as evidenced by the indicators and the evidence that's shared, we do exactly that. Thinking about some of the key leadership strategies that are reflected from the 24-25 school year, K through 12, great use of social emotional, the screener, the social academic, and well, SABERS and My SABERS, lots of acronyms, but we used a screener that allowed us to gather information to make key decisions to support our students. Shift to the student experience survey with our district's next path system to have climate survey data that is immediately available for staff and leaders to process. And so just the use of NextPath, but more importantly, having that data available for SBLTs and principals to use what made an incredible difference. Bi-weekly behavior data reviews with our Director of Pupil Services, Director of Special Education, and other key leaders allowed us to look at the data and look at students and be able to make in-time decisions to help support our students. Staff participated in PDA pathological demand avoidance training. I believe in one of our last presentations about foundations, you all had asked the question, how are we taking this learning from foundations and sharing it with our schools? This is an example of how there was learning at foundations with a small group of staff, and we saw the results of it, and we were able to expand that to our neighborhood schools. Verona area education, our VESPA and our VAEA, we were able to work together. We created small groups to discuss behavior policies and practices. And so we asked for volunteers. These groups met 4 times, and we were able to take and hear the voices of those that were most closest to the work. So our SEAs, our case managers, our building leaders, they met on certain topics, they made recommendations, and we will begin to implement some of those recommendations in this coming school year. Additional key leadership strategies that are reflected, counselor role-alike time that focused on SEL instruction. This is something that I'm sure Adam we'll talk more about, but our first ever district-wide SEL symposium, and that allowed our support teams to come together and dive into the learning and spend time together. Paid release time for school teams and central office to engage in restorative practices training, ongoing development of extended learning pathways and behavior coaching cycles, and our administrative supporting review and updates to our progressive response model. And I'm sure Adam will talk more about that, but we spent a great deal of time talking to our leaders, getting their input so that we can review and update the progressive response model so it truly reflects our beliefs. Again, it's a document. It's not a static document. As we learn and grow, we continue to adjust it. And then lastly, using the time that a student might be on suspension to take time to collaborate and problem solve so that when the student returns, that they're not returning to the same condition, that we've done some things and made some adjustments. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zingshan. He's going to talk more about the content of the monitoring report as well as leadership moves for the 25-26 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. So I'm actually going to start with an interesting 2 slides here, because we operate in an education system where disproportionality exists. And if we look nationwide, one of the areas where there's the greatest amount of disproportionality, it's in behavior data. And in our district, it is interesting, actually the 2 areas that we are in compliance with exceptions are actually also the 2 areas where we have the most to celebrate in the progress we've made to reduce disproportionality in our district. One of those is OE 10.3.2, which states that student discipline records maintained by each school verify that discipline referrals and suspensions are generally proportionate for all student groups. We are disproportionate in this area, thus the exceptions part. However, when we look at data between the 23-24 and 24-25 school year, we see tremendously positive growth in reducing disproportionality in our district. And that is a testament to the work of our staff. That is a testament to the work of all of the leadership moves that we just highlighted. 3 specific demographics that I want to call out when we look at the percentage of all behavior referrals in our school district, kindergarten through 12th grade, between 23-24, 24-25, we see 20% decrease in the percentage of those behavior referrals from our Black or African American students, and a nearly 10% reduction in suspensions. That is more time in class, that is more time in school, that is more time learning, that is an improved climate, that is an improved experience for our students. And that is something to celebrate. And while we are not yet done with our work, because we are not yet proportionate, we are trending in the right direction. Another group there are students receiving free or reduced price lunch. We can see a nearly 15% reduction in the percentage of behavior referrals from that group of students, and an 8% reduction in the number of suspensions, or the percentage of suspensions for that student group as compared to all of our students in our district between 23-24, 24-25. Named a number of leadership moves specific to better supporting our students with IEPs. You can see a similar reduction in the percentage of behavior referrals for our students with IEPs of 10% of all behavior referrals from 23-24 to 24-25, and a similar reduction in the amount and proportion of those students making up all of our suspensions. And so we say we are not done yet. We are trending in the right direction. And in the data that often, and we've talked about this for many presentations with many data sets, improvements of percentage points. When we look at the scale size, it is something worth celebrating. Improving by 10 to 15% is amazing growth. And so hope that we can continue to build on this moving forward to continue to reduce disproportionality in this data set, because these are humans that we are talking about here, and their experience in school matters. And we think about the learning climate. That's an area we've talked a lot about this year in our teaching and learning framework. This is an important, integral part of students' learning experience. Beyond the time they're spending in class, their feelings of feeling valued. Talk about that in our climate survey data, and the relationships they have with the adults in school.
Are you okay with a question on this piece now, or do you want to wait till further into the present? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
I think it's just interesting, trying to figure out how to phrase this. So, especially with data like this or disproportionality, I think there's a temptation in some of the, just having been in the district for so long, of looking for ways to, I'm gonna say fudge the data, but how do you make change the data looks better without authentic change? So I don't know if there's a way that you could just give a little more specificity to this. If this doesn't mean we're turning a blind eye, if this doesn't mean, right, like this means cultural shift in terms of how students feel in our spaces. Do you kind of get what my question is? Like that amount of change is so massive and so impressive, and it isn't just, well, we just won't suspend for that anymore to make the data look better. Do you kind of get what I'm saying here? Like if there's a way to just elevate the fact that this is about a student experience that we're talking about. This is around staff having shifts in how they perceive behaviors. If there's anything that I'm saying that's kind of resonating with the response, that's just curious about that.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, when I read through this as well, that was the same thing that popped out, and I wanted more detail of what are the lessons learned? How do we continue to replicate this and move this forward? Because we want to reach proportionality. We actually ultimately want to reach, we're not using suspension and behavioral modification because we don't need those structures and systems any longer as a community. But what specifically are we doing that? I want to know, is there some magic, what is the magic or the magic sauce? As we said earlier, that providing these outcomes.
And a couple of things I think we can name. I think the call out to restorative practices. Early on, I believe it was last year, we had Mary Seidel from Stoner Prairie come and she spoke about the work, the anecdotal data that she had by employing restorative practices. So I think the shift in mindset that we're seeing with the adults. I also think the call out the work that we've done with our progressive response model. There's one specific call out that I'll talk about is, the word respect. There was removal of the word respect because it is so nuanced. However, that came about after multiple conversations and learning from our students, from our staff, and even just listening to the voice of our parents through advisories and just through other avenues. So when you say what's the magic sauce, those are just two areas that I can call out that restorative practices, the shift. And again, it didn't happen overnight. This is year 5. And again, but the fact that teachers and staff want restorative practices, we're also doing this work with our parents and the advisories. We're helping them understand, but we're also helping our students understand. So coming to the table with this mindset, also working with our security assistant. However, to your point, it's not that we're not suspending students, because there are times where we do. But when students return, we're not returning them to the same spot. We're having those conversations so that we're building plans, so that when they return, we're giving them the supports that they need so that they can return and be successful. It's looking at the data, having those conversations. They meet every other week. They're looking at the data. They're looking at who are our top 10 students, how do we respond to them? How do we meet with the principals? What do we need to do to create the conditions so students can be successful? So it's not just one thing, it's multiple things, multiple levers that we're pulling. All of those things have to be in tandem, but more importantly, people have to want to do the work and they see the value of the work, and our students are seeing and feeling benefiting from it.
Yeah, and what I'll add, and I know John
Yep.
also raised his hand. We've talked a lot about some of the reactive things. It's really, this dovetails very nicely from the conversation we just had with some of our teachers. Our students are spending the majority of their day in the classroom with their staff. And the amount of time that we've invested in the ability to plan together. And we think about this time last year when we were talking about the GLEAM strategies in terms of grade level. When students are engaged in class, they want to be there. The work that we've done to support student attendance, to have them in school more, allows supports to be provided, which improves those relationships, which allows them to learn, which helps them want to be at school. And so supporting the planning that our teachers are doing through Roll Like Monday, the opportunity to look at data, the support conversations you've had around grade level instruction, that is one of the best engagement strategies. This is about purpose, not control. And our teachers are living that every day in the classroom because, students can come and we're authority figures in education, and really cherishing that aspect of our students are coming. And what our colleague Karen Glover will say is every single time a student crosses that threshold of the school, they are announcing their intention to learn, and what we do with that matters. And so the instruction every day, and then investment in Late Start Monday, co-planning, co-teaching, the data conversations is very much a part of this. And that was something that we invested a lot in over the last 2 years, particularly this last year, with specific strategies targeting that instruction. Beyond the work we do in positive behavior interventions and sports, which is also investment in making sure we're holding students accountable to expectations we've made very clear to them, talked and reinforced over the course of the year. The social emotional learning instruction we do through things like Second Step that help students be able to better regulate their emotions, and having strategies to deal with things when they become escalated. Beyond some of the things that Dr. Hawkins mentioned, all of those things come together very nicely into just improved learning climates. And I think we're seeing the dividends of that investment pay off in many academic areas, but also here, which snowballs very nicely.
I know there's a question out there for John and also Corby. Just really quick, I just think it's so important for us to continue to think about, while this report is speaking about behavior right now, behavior is never a standalone in terms of student performance, student outcomes. If you think about student behavior, if a student has a sense of belonging in our spaces and a sense of engagement in the classroom, the likelihood of behavior is almost none. So when you talk about the academic expectations that we have for students, as well as the solid relationships that our staff continue to work on and build, those are key contributors to behavior. And you only singly look at behavior, not behavior, we're never going to look at get the full picture, full scope of it. We have our SEO where we're teaching what expected behaviors look like and reinforcing them by modeling that, as well as, and this can get misconstrued. I've seen it misconstrued almost to a fault and harm to students. You can never, and I appreciate you, I understand why you asked the question, I appreciate that you asked it. Lowering expectations is never an equity strategy, and it can never be an equity strategy. And that is actually counter to what we believe in the Verona School District Enterprise. Like you never will lower the expectation of how a student should perform in the classroom or how a student should behave in any type of social setting. So anyone who believes that by giving a pass or not having the expectations or not suspending when it's appropriate as an equity strategy he uses this very powerful word, has actually bastardized equity. And that's an unacceptable practice here.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I love this conversation. I hope you guys can hear me. I try not to jump in from a distance like this, but I feel like I have to, because what I like about this conversation is that, you know, we run the risk when we focus on results as a board, and that's the reason for our policies, is to produce results, that we do what I think has been talked about as like something other districts or in the past has become a bastardization of what people are doing, where you want the results to be that, you know, the suspensions go down, the office referrals go down. And so there becomes, if you're just focused on those results, there becomes a lot of pressure on just not referring people to the office. And what I want to make sure that everybody's hearing is that that has not been the case here. That the focus here is on setting the standards and providing the supports as the primary thing. And that we, you know, as a community and as a board, have to occasionally, even though we're focused on results, have the patience to let the processes work to get the results we want and not just be rushing to the results. And so as I'm listening to this conversation, there's so many wonderful things that are being talked about how we've provided those supports by implementing, you know, restorative practices, by focusing on some of the social emotional learnings and things like that, so that we're naturally getting to the results that we want, rather than, you know, just doing less of these bad things, which would be a lowering of the standards. So I really like how this conversation is going. I just wanted to re-articulate that from a board perspective, that as we often embroil ourselves in the work of getting results, we also have to focus on the stories, the how we got there, the processes, so that we're getting those authentic results and we're not just trying to force things in a way that erodes trust. And I think school districts, even in the area, have eroded trust in the past by being so focused on results that the supports get lost in the mix. And that's not what I hear happening here, and I really dig it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks. Corey?
Yeah. A couple of things. Dr. Hawkins, you and Adam touched on it. And when Adam said people, I think that that these numbers represent people, right? But I wanted to point out something that you got to, we're going to Dr. Hawkins, and that is the amazing hiring that you've done recently. I'm thinking of Lamar Shackelford. I'm thinking of Rashard Griffin. I'm thinking of, you know, Kyle Jefferson. And I can go on and on and on. But I think it also speaks to, Rochelle, something you and I talked about earlier this year, and that's the demographic mismatch, and having our students have educators representative of family. And I think that's what we're also seeing in these numbers as well, that needs to be echoed. And I'm so proud and happy that Rochelle and Assistant Principal Harris took that time to really dive into the data, the numbers, and examine that demographic mismatch and actually do something about it. So that I think that needs to be awarded, celebrated, because I think that really is one of the pieces, components that what we're seeing here with these numbers happening. So.
Thank you, Corby.
So the other area we are in compliance with exceptions is, you're going to hear some redundancies here, is because the total percentage, the change, it was basically, it was flat. And so between 23-24 and 24-25, this particular OE policy, OE 10.6.2, looks at discipline data showing a reduction in the number of incidents related to physical aggression and or disrespect annually. And so when we look at our data between 23-24 and 24-25, we saw a reduction in the percentage of our behavior referrals for student-to-student physical aggression. As again, something to celebrate, speaks to many of the leadership moves we talked about. However, we saw a proportionally parallel increase in the percentage of behavior referrals for what in our progressive response along this last year was labeled as non-compliance, defiance, disrespect. One of the things Dr. Hawkins touched on that we looked at when we engaged with our families, when we engaged with our staff, and when we engaged particularly with our administrators around our progressive response model, was the fact that the idea of disrespect and defiance can be defined very differently depending on one's life experience. I think we all live in a general ballpark of what that means, but when we are looking at children and looking at students, that language like that, like disrespect, like defiance, doesn't accurately capture what we're really trying to get at in a progressive response model. And so based on that feedback, we changed that for moving forward to the category of refusal to follow staff directives, defined as blatant disregard for staff instructions, and the student continues to disregard even after staff intervention. That basically speaks to action, and that's really important here, that there is something that we are doing as adults in supporting our students to support them with whatever directive we've given, to try something before we are potentially referring them out of class to miss their learning for support in that area. That's something that may still happen, but felt that that definition takes some of the charge nature out of some of those terms and will provide us better data to actually be able to intervene when things like this might be happening in our classrooms and in our school environments. And that's something just to note that this will be the category of data that we will be looking at in addition to the student-to-student interaction piece for this indicator in monitoring reports moving forward.
Thank you.
So another item of note that you will see with the change that Dr. Hawkins mentioned in our student experience survey and the many improvements there to have questions that will really get at the heart of what we're trying to get in our students' experience in school. There were some changes to that climate survey. One of those being we shifted not just some of the question types, we actually shifted the response scale to better align with what we were looking for in making that data more actionable and immediately available. And with that though, the ability to compare from year to year changed a little bit. And so you probably noted in our monitoring report some areas where we put a little asterisk and labeled that in blue. And those are areas where particularly the response types or the questions asked don't allow for comparable data from year to year to be able to make really a fair judgment of that. And so our data this year will form the baseline by which we'll be looking at compliance here moving forward. And of those three areas, here's one, indicator one for OE 10.5, looked at the percentage of students who indicate that they have a very positive or somewhat positive impression of culture and climate of the VA of our district basically increasing. That was not a question asked in our last climate survey. That was an improvement that was made in our leadership groups to make sure that we are asking that now and moving forward, and can see that 67.3% of our students indicated that they had a very positive or somewhat positive impression. Basically, I feel like I belong in school. One of the other improvements that was made, and in looking at responses there, in the past there had been inclusion of students that have an ambivalent response. We've taken that out. We are only reporting students that have that very positive or somewhat positive impression of culture, climate and culture in our district through the question, I feel like I belong at school, not also including the students that neither agree nor disagree.
So at this point, my question with this is, is the team feeling like any of the indicators ought to shift given the way that the questions are changing on our new survey? Or do you find like it's just the baseline piece, the non-comparative, but the indicator still seems relevant?
For the majority of our indicators in OE10 can absolutely stay the same. There is one, however, that looks at, and I believe when this was written a number of years ago, there had been a question at that time, 2 iterations of a climate survey before this one, that asked a question very specifically about students ever being verbally threatened by staff. That is not a question that we ask anymore. That would be the one indicator that would likely require some review, because that's not a question that's asked anymore.
And I just surfaced that because I think we've had this before where there's these maybe lingering wonderings on the team's part about indicators, right? Those are things that you all own, that if any of that feels fresh and relevant now, that we're certainly open as a board to have that come back sooner rather than later. So it isn't a year from now and realization of, oh, maybe that indicator wasn't as relevant as we'd hoped. So just wanted to put that in the space and ensure that you all are working with the things that seem helpful as well.
So with that, looking ahead to next year, some areas of learning and discussion that will lead to action for the 25-26 school year. So one big one stemming from our social emotional learning symposium and the planning that our counselors have done, the way that that is cascaded to our pupil services teams, our school leadership teams, and our admin teams, is the development of a standards-aligned scope and sequence that aligns with Wisconsin social emotional learning competencies that has been created by our staff for our staff that looks at how incorporating our core curricular resources will meet those standards over the course of the year, including providing accompanying scheduling guidance that supports ensuring that that can happen over the course of the year. As Dr. Hawkins mentioned earlier, we are continuing to look to grow and expand our extended learning pathways program within our district, specifically at the high school level for expansion in the 26-27 school year that will be happening this school year. Over the past year, we took allocation that we currently had, was repurposed to create a behavior support program manager position. That is the individual that currently supports our extended learning pathways program will continue to do that, while also living in core social emotional learning instruction. And so we think about our multi-level systems of support. Our extended learning pathways would represent more of a tier 3 support. So there are very few students in our district that have demonstrated that level of need. That individual will continue to work and support those students, planning around that, but will basically continue their work across all tiers. And so supporting from core instruction all the way to the students that need the most support. That's a staff member that will report directly to me, while also continuing to support special education programming within our district, behavior coaching cycles, things like that. Some of the very things that we've highlighted as leadership moves this year to continue to grow those to be more supportive of our schools and our students and our families. We have developed with our school psychologist team data processes and tools to assist schools in better using their self-screener data, knowing that our behavior data often captures our externalizers, our students who are outwardly demonstrating need and communicating either skill gaps or unmet needs. We also have our internalizers. Compliance does not always mean engagement. Our students may be struggling more inwardly, and that self-screener data helps us support interventions there too, and have developed those processes to support schools to better use that. This coming year, we've aligned our core instruction to the Wisconsin social emotional learning competencies. We'll be doing that accompanying work with our tier 2 interventions. And so things like check and check out. Some of the programs that are available specifically for psychologists or counselors, also sometimes used by our social workers to support students in small group work, maybe more individualized sessions, making sure that those align as well and making those accompanying changes. We will continue to support our restorative practices work in the district. There were a lot of school teams that sent groups of 10 to 15 staff to 3-day training this year. That was grant funded. That was a huge addition to basically our cohort of staff who are restorative practices trained. And we were able to support Zealand Walsh, our district restorative practices coordinator, to be fully trained as a trainer of trainers, to develop a cohort as we continue to move forward that we can look inward to support staff to receive more training there, without having to look outward to support more staff to become not just trained in this, but to actually be trainers of trainers themselves. We continue to develop restraint, seclusion, and de-escalation training. I want to emphasize that de-escalation piece, because when we're able to de-escalate, we don't need to use restraint, we don't need to use seclusion, doing that in a way that's more scenario-based. So continuing to support tabletop conversations with school teams, with support from our behavior support program manager, Carly, with Nate, with Chad, our security resource officer will be a part of those conversations. We'll continue to do that work into this year. And then the last, which is a key piece around the data aspect, and appreciate that our board, as mentioned, one very clear way to support improvement in this data is to just have less referrals. That's not what we're looking to do here. We want consistency across our schools to support data that are comparable, to support our work and to be able to support decisions around how our efforts are actually impacting students and impacting staff. And so we've developed very clear decision rules to support schools and when a certain behavior might need to be logged, when it is a violation of our progressive response model, results in a student needing support outside of the adults that are directly supporting them, and results in time having to be spent outside of their current learning environment to receive that support. To be able to support greater consistency there across our schools, because every school is kind of a microcosm and a community in and of itself, and they have some of their own decision rules, and that's partly why our progressive response model is built the way it is, because it's built to respect some of the nuances in our different school climates, our different school cultures and all of that, but to have enough consistency that the data that we're looking at can be comparable across schools, to look at things that are working, to be able to build from that. And so those decision rules are another thing that we've worked on this summer to support more consistency there.
You mentioned, Dr. Hawkins, you mentioned last year when Mary was here and talked about how the adults got to experience restorative practices themselves to then know how to better implement and support restorative practices with learners. I'm wondering about that with the de-escalation piece, right? Because we're all humans showing up in these spaces, right? Adults and students. Is there a parallel where adults are also understanding their own de-escalation, right, as showing up in a space as the educator and being able to support students? Is that right? Is there like parallel experience for adults as well with something like that?
Maybe not directly parallel to restorative practices, because this, is information. I think one improvement mentioning in our welcome back work is something that we're looking to roll out for all staff beyond the work that we do specifically for staff that might be specifically trained in restraint seclusion. There's more general training all of our staff get, but through, I forget the acronym, CPI, the vendor that we use to support that training are actually using very specifically a module that they have around de-escalation that will be something all staff will have access to. I think beyond that, these are the conversations, that's why we have Late Start Mondays. These are the conversations that are happening when teachers get together to plan. These are the conversations we're having when our counselors get together to use the data to plan for supports around students. These are the sorts of strategies that we're supporting when we follow up, when we have the data meetings that schools are having. We're doing that as a central office as well, and then having conversations with school leadership staff about where further support might be needed, and that's when we're leaning in, when there might be a need for further training, because the data is showing that there might be support gap.
So not yet.
Yeah. Hence the, right, yeah. And such a reflection, like this OE in particular, I think just so highly elevates this backstory to the point, John, that you were kind of making of the investment the community has made in creating time and space, the grants that our district has been able to get to be able to fund the work that's gone into this. I mean, this is investment coming to life to be giving better experiences for our students. So I just think this encapsulates so much of the priorities we've tried to have as a board and to your team and the community to give you all the space and the resources to be able to invest in this, because I heard you, this is year 5 and this is where, right, we start to see the data coming to life of the investments being made.
I also think the work that I'll be doing to continue to expand our pathways under extended learning programs will also help to support this work. Looking at our secondary students, as Adam lifted up, but how do we provide opportunities for students that aren't being successful? And so perhaps they're not acting out, but they're certainly not demonstrating to their highest level of performance. And so creating pathways that support their interest or align to their interests will also help. You'll see evidence of this in this monitoring report. So just looking forward to the work that we'll be able to do to support all of our students that aligns with our strategic framework.
I have a question about one of the indicators that's in compliance with exception, Adam, that you were talking about, that 10.6.2. I thought I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that the number of overall incidents went down, and what's in the evidence is the percentage of those incidents that are those behavior referrals. Is that right?
So we always share data in terms of percentages here, because data is a representation of need, and we are here to meet that need. And so as we continue to have consistency in data management practices, there's a possibility that the number of behaviors will go up, not because there's any increase in behaviors, we're just doing a better job of keeping that data. And so what this specifically looks at, Joe, is the percentage of all of our behavior referrals for any progressive response model violation for disrespect or physical aggression.
And part of the reason I was asking, and it may be that the wording of the indicator needs to change, because the actual indicator talks about raw number, not percentage of overall behavioral incidents. And what you said just makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm wondering, like, do we need to change the wording of the indicator? Because right now what it says is the
number.
Overall, reduction in the number of incidents related to physical aggression and or disrespect annually, but the evidence we're providing is a little bit different than that. that makes sense.
Slightly, yeah, because an increase in enrollment can cause an increase in behavior referrals. An increase in need can cause an increase in behavior referrals, correct?
Okay. And correspondingly, if the overall number of behavioral incidents total or referrals total went way down, you could have a percentage for behavioral incidents go up, but the raw number would be a lot lower. Okay.
So with that, we'll hand it back over our board for any further discussion or questions you might have in consideration for compliance with OE10.
Exactly. Any further questions for the team board as we prepare to move the report into our hands? Okay, so we have received the report for OE10. I will accept a motion to accept and approve the report as presented so then we can begin our discussion in terms of this question about compliance with exceptions or otherwise. Is there a motion? Thanks, Christopher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Corby. So discussion about what we are thinking in terms of compliance. So we've obviously just had this elevated again about the notes the team has shared with us around the couple of exceptions within the indicators. Curious discussion, board members, on how we're leaning in terms of a compliance vote.
I feel like it's the same discussion I've had.
So I look right to you with that smirk on your face, yeah.
That in particular, the indicator about having the referrals be proportionate to our student body, that is absolutely our goal, but that's the exact type of indicator that we're setting admin up for failure at first, you know, in regarding. So like, it's hard for me to say that to hold that against the administration, but at the same time, under our governance model, that's all we have is the indicators. That's what we're supposed to be responding based on. So I'm very conflicted on that.
When Joe resolves that conflict.
Please tell us,
Yeah.
right?
I will go along with that.
I feel like that's a conflict of every report we do.
I feel like this is the discussion, our exceptions, the process, right? The achievement of improvement, is that still an exception to your point because it isn't landing where the policy says it ought to land?
Yeah, maybe to put a little finer, like we're not in compliance with the indicator, but it's because the indicator's bad, not because we think we didn't do a good job at what the policy is saying.
Right, or because the indicator's lofty.
Yeah,
which
or
we've also
is
talked about.
aspirational.
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
though we've made huge progress toward
Right.
it, it's a goal, not an indicator.
So it's more like compliance not achieved. Progress is being made, but compliance is not yet achieved.
Yeah.
That would be, then now we're having a narrative to monitor.
Which, as a side note, that I'd like to elevate at a future workshop, that I think this is what I would like to see us capture with these reports. So then when we get to our culminating evaluation and remembering what has transpired with all of these reports over the year, a board summary that captures this, I think is incredibly important. That we don't just land with a check mark and walk away. We have some sort of summative, you know, something that's captured what we're talking about here. John, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, sorry if there's some background noise. In a noisy place. This is for me like, you know, we're wanting a result here. Like the indicator is about a result. And what I heard discussed was that we're in compliance in the sense that operationally, we're doing what we want to do. We're making the progress that we want to make. We just don't have the result that we've set for ourselves yet. And like that in terms of the absolute goal. So I'm kind of struggling with just all of it. But for me, you know, like the progress that's being made indicates that the policies that the admin team have put into place are in compliance with what I would want from this. We're just not at the result we want yet.
I think everything looks really good.
Agreed.
I think this is like a huge, I mean, this really is a huge amount of progress that's moving forward. Things that I think are particularly, I mean, there's a lot of pieces that could be highlighted as particularly interesting, but this has been one thing that has driven me crazy the entire time I've been on the board, and I'm so relieved that we have moved it away from disrespect. Make it a tangible, not subjective thing. Thank you. I'm so thrilled that that's such a small thing, but it isn't a small thing because what is disrespectful to me may not be disrespectful to the next person. And our students are the ones who are being held accountable for shifting expectations of people. So I'm a little thing, but not a little thing.
And I would also echo, I think when I think about directly the educational equity framework and identifying barriers where they exist, without that intentional work and identifying where those barriers are, we would not see improvement. And I think, again, as we've mentioned earlier in other aspects of this meeting, we're talking real human living beings here and what the outcomes we want to see for them and setting them up for success through our system. And so I think that progress, I want to highlight that takes time of work. And as long as we're moving in that path of improvement and we're seeing the outcomes get there, I think I'm satisfied with that. And that makes me happy that we've identified that opportunity.
So I think basically what I agree, I think we're at this point kind of discussing semantics about how we approve the results that are the goals that have been achieved. I personally feel like things are really moving in the right direction and I'm thrilled. While I think we're debating how we check a certain box, the overall sentiment is, this is great work. And for that, as we held everybody hostage, as we debate our semantics on, our 3 arbitrarily chosen check boxes, I kind of don't want to lose sight of that this is great work. We really should be elevating the great work. And, to that end, I would be fine approving the report as it's presented and then putting the work back on us to resolve the internal debate we have about, we've got a little pedantic over here sometimes. And so I'm happy to move this forward because, again, this is great work.
Corey?
Yeah, I agree with Meredith. One thing I wanted to point out is just in my time on the board, watching the way you guys have transformed the way you collect data has been outstanding. From I just think about back to 22 up until now, it's just been amazing. And I think we're seeing the proof of that for what you just presented to us. So thank you.
I am trying to capture notes per my, and just for the record, I've heard from a colleague in another district that it's usually best for the president to not be the note taker during the summary gathering because I also ought to be facilitating. But I'm just gonna capture some.
I think I've resolved my own,
Great, is there a motion?
I'm ready to move past feeling.
I wasn't calling you pedantic.
I call myself pedantic almost daily.
I would refer to myself in the same.
But I'm ready to move past feeling handcuffed by specific indicators, and I'm ready in my own mind to ask myself the question, do I feel like what was presented shows that the administration is in compliant with our operational expectation? And I think this report shows that they are. So I'm ready to say compliant, no exceptions is where I'm at.
Okay, so we had an original motion that had no vote attached to it, right? We simply moved into our sphere. Is there an adjustment then maybe to a previous motion to give?
Sure, yeah, I'll make that motion, yeah. Approve as fully compliant.
Okay, great. Is there a second? Meredith?
Second.
Second to Joe's motion that we're going to take a vote on OE 10 being in full compliance. Any other further discussion from board members? All those in favor of approving OE 10 as being in compliant, signify with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Good job.
great job.
Thank
you.
Team and team. Great discussion. Thank you. And truly impactful work. All right, moving on to board updates. Anything specific to communications or general updates? Shh, not yet. Not till we get to the calendar.
General updates?
Yeah. Got anything?
Yes, I have to shout out Stephanie Sanchez for her amazing representation of the district at the Country Black Men Back to School event. She was amazing. I was at a table representing a million different things, felt like the NASCAR stickers on,
Okay.
but was strategically placed next to the Verona table, and just hearing her interact with different parents and kids as well about different questions they had about the district. One of them we'll talk about later. They did ask where Dr. Clarity was. That came up quite a bit. So we did have to share that you were fresh out of surgery. So you may be getting some flowers and stuff. But I did have to point that out. Stephanie was incredible.
Awesome. Thank you for elevating that. Anything else? Okay, moving on to superintendent's consent agenda. Please make sure you've looked over the superintendent consent agenda. Are there any questions? Hearing none, the superintendent's consent agenda is approved as presented. Similarly, making sure that you've looked over our board consent agenda. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, the board's consent agenda is approved as well. Future dates, regular board meetings, still on September, getting our list for our budget meeting and the annual meeting that will happen prior to that. And just to get a note about convocation, ensuring that Lori and I know who will be in attendance. I sent each of you an email about just some finer details of that date. Please feel free to let me know if you have any thoughts about that as we get into final planning for welcoming back all of our staff. So that's why, Christopher, the summer is not over yet. And
Just to look at the presentation here, I think this is August 25th for convocation, is that correct?
yes. Oh, it says it correctly on the agenda. Is it wrong on the slides?
It's wrong on the slide.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I was looking at my printed agenda.
We just started school
Thank you. Ooh,
in September.
surprise, staff. No. Okay, great. Then with that, we'll shift into board workshop, just spending a little bit of time previewing this concept that we've talked about with now new results policies, which thank you, Lori. Each of you have a binder that then is just a reprint collection of little tiny adjustments to policies here and there, but then the back, of course, has our new results policies that we have voted to approve. But starting to create the brainstorming space for then how the working calendar might want to shift and reflect how to then monitor these new results in a way that seems reasonable to the team, not only from a data collection standpoint, but also from a time management standpoint. So opening up for discussion, and there is a link in board docs to our previous calendar with the results policies as they were written and when they were monitored for reference. Let the profound insights begin.
This appears a lot cleaner than previous.
Oh, just the binder
Just
itself?
the binder itself.
One of the things that I know we endeavor to do this in the past is trying to time monitoring reports that are based on data with when the data is collected, so that it doesn't feel really stale by the time it gets to us. And that may be really difficult, especially when it comes to like the climate survey, because I think a lot of different reports have data from that. But,
When we're looking at our calendar, I feel like all I want to do is monitor reports on a regular schedule, but I feel like the admin team would be best positioned to tell us what would make the most sense as far as when. So I could guess, and I will be wrong without fail. So I would almost prefer to receive a suggestion from the people who actually know what we're putting into the reports as
Mhm.
opposed to.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Meredith, and I think one of the things we would just like insight on before we create a draft to present to the board is the appetite for more of a mega reports. Could we have all core at one time? Could we have, what we don't want to do is have 27
Yeah.
different results policies. So if there's appetite for those bigger reports at one time, then yes, we can provide a.
I like the idea of the bigger reports. I would say that like the core, like reading, math feels heavy. And those, you know, there's a lot that goes into those, but some I think the other ones have a natural, could be very, you know, very easily. But yes, I don't think 28 reports really what I'm hoping to. But I think like, so our core academics, like our R2s, I can see as standalone reports, but I can see the R3, 4, 5, and 6 more as mega reports, if that helps. That would be my thought. I don't know what the board.
Well, you didn't ask. Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, anybody who has a thought about it.
I think, you know, as I'm thinking about the types of data we can collect, it's okay, we would probably like to put science and social studies together because of where they come from, and then we can separate language arts and math because there's a multitude of spaces that those come from, and then do more mega reports on 3, 4, 5, and 6. That would be okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's still, it doesn't need to be, I think, from my perspective, I mean, looking at this, there's some synergy between like R3.4 world languages and then R4.4 with our charters and programs. I mean, maybe we don't need to be quite so, you know, defined, but that would be, again, where I put it up to admin putting this together. What type of information are you going to be pulling that then would end up being a redundancy when you're doing it again in a different mega report? Maybe there's some natural, you know, affinities that I'm not seeing or that I think are there but don't exist. So again, I do like the idea of language arts and math being standalone of each other. Science and social studies being combined, I think is a reasonable thing. Beyond that, I'm not opposed to mega reports, whatever makes up those reports. I don't know what the rest of the board has strong feelings about this.
I'm open to that as well, especially because we have kind of crafted these in such a different way. I feel like trying a different way of monitoring just feels like a logical next step. So, yeah. John?
I agree with like having the mega reports. I'm open to actually having all sorts of mega reports. But what would help me would be understanding like what data and what topics are covered, you know, in the administration's eyes, like under each heading, so we can see like what discussions are going to come out of each of those mega reports. Like what Meredith brought out about world languages and charters in our programs. You know, we have programs that are language-based that are going to cut across those different areas. So talking about those programs in the context of a mega report for that whole section makes a little bit of sense. I'd want to see for the core academics, in particular, like what data is breaking down under which section. So yeah.
So if I think admin needs like just some direction, it's we don't want 28 reports, and how you configure them that makes the most sense for your data. That would be, I think, what I would be interested in hearing.
I almost wonder if there's a way to kind of coincide certain OEs with parts of these as well. I mean, we've talked about that, right? OE 11 has such carryover, and we're trying to differentiate between what an operational expectation is and what a results is. But if there's data collection, if there's information synthesis happening from the team where those sort of live also in parallel spaces, I think that also just holistically drives the calendar, that OEs and Rs aren't seen as so separate that we don't find ways to just carry a calendar that lets that natural fit work as well. And yeah, I like drafts coming from admin on this as well, because this is the work we want to see we want to see it at some point, but I have no preference that doesn't override whatever is logical, kind of what you said, Joe, about where and when does the data live that's relevant for the team. So it's in the moment for you, let that be a space that feels genuine.
And whatever's the most efficient use of your staff's resources,
Yes.
because I feel like under the old system, at least this is how I looked at it, there was a lot of like self-sustaining busy work. Like we're taking up a ton of your team's time to put together reports that don't really tell the right story.
Mm-hmm.
So like the whole point in this restructure for me was to kind of be more efficient in how we're monitoring. So I hope that would carry over with your team as well. So however it's structured in a way that's most efficient, I'm supportive of.
Yeah, I think again, thanks for the question, Meredith, with the parameters of understanding that we're not doing individual ones are very, very beneficial. Our next steps would be to go look at some of the calendars that we don't necessarily control as a district, like state testing, national testing and things of that nature, and cross-reference that when, not just when the tests are taken, but when we actually get the data back and have an opportunity to synthesize that, and then we be far more prepared to be able to come back with some draft calendars from there.
That's great.
Amy, did I miss anything that we should consider?
No, I think this is a great idea. Begin working together to build a draft. I think, as you noted earlier, Dr. Clarity, this was a presentation in OE10 about behavior, and yet it connects to value and belonging. So when I think about the strategic framework and the journey of a lifelong learner and those larger buckets, there's lots of different ways that we can organize this based on the interconnected nature. So I appreciate the call out of, let's make this efficient and let's make it meaningful and worthwhile. So this is great.
I can think of if you haven't met Greg, our data analyst, he's probably at home doing a backflip right now because of Joe and Meredith's comments. So every time we come knock on his door for new data, he's great. He does, I don't know what we do without Greg, but to your point, just being able to do these in buckets and packages that are meaningful to the board and the community, as well as not every other week, and asking them to do something different would be very helpful.
Yeah, great. Keep us posted, and when it makes sense to come back to revisit it, let's do so.
This was slightly under calendar. We also wanted to get a better understanding of now that we've come to some resolution with OE3 of when we can bring that back to the board.
Oh, right. I would, in my perspective, yes, next. Yeah, I mean, I feel like as a board, I'm ready to have that information come back to wrap up the aspect of OE3 that we had delayed because of.
I have already forgotten about it.
So whenever I think your team is prepared, we can.
And on the efficiency note, we've already had a full presentation on that.
Right, yeah.
We can just bring it back, talk about the update, and then.
Okay, move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that back up. Okay. Well, with all of that and next steps for lots of us, I would accept a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, Meredith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Corby. All those in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned.